So, creepy crawly, I say yes, please. Let's get in the Halloween spirit with an exploration of creepiness. This is our mascot, the ogre-faced or net-casting spider. We'll talk more about him towards the end. So, creeps came from Charles Dickens, first credited in 1849 in the novel David Copperfield, to mean an unpleasant, tingly chill up the spine. That was the first use, but since 1860, it's been quite popular. So creepy, causing an unpleasant feeling of fear or unease, or creepy crawly, a crawling insect or animal. And there's often an element of disgusting. On the right here, you see a whole lot of Madagascar hissing cockroaches, one of the things that shows up in movies on the wrong continent frequently. So I had to take care of colonies of thousands of Madagascar hissing cockroaches. And even as an entomology student, moving thousands of cockroaches with my hands creeped me out. So what is it that causes us to be scared? Obvious things like poisonous or venomous animals or carrying disease. Fast and unusual motion. One of the things that we'll look at for spiders is that they extend their legs with pressure, not with muscles. So we like being scared because it gives us essentially drugs, adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine that give us an opioid-like sense of euphoria. We also like to feel connected to people that we share those experiences with. So our biggest fear in the Chapman University 2016 survey, the fear of insects and spiders showed up more often than the fear of germs, becoming the victim of a violent crime, becoming unemployed, or dying. So Halloween, where'd it come from? From the 5th century BC, it came from Samhain, a Gaelic celebration to honor the dead, protect the harvest, and bridge the divide between fall and winter. And the Celts believed that at that time, the divide between the other world and our world was at its thinnest, and spirits and magic could enter the world. And they lit these big bonfires, as fires always gave us sort of a sense of comfort at those times. And those attracted insects, and insects attracted bats. And the magic came with witches too. The pagan goddess known as the crone was honored during Samhain, and she's our regular image of a witch. Spiders as well. So spiders are connected to witches, as are cats and rats, because they were believed to be the evil companions of witches during medieval times. So why are we afraid of spiders? So some of them are really dangerous. At the right there, you see the pretty fearsome fangs of a Sydney funnel web spider that can take a chunk out of a broomstick. But there's only about 0.07% of all the spiders that we know that are that dangerous. So we come back to our mascot here, the net casting or ogre-faced spider. Largest eyes of any spider that can gather 1,500 times the amount of light gathered by a human eye, even more than cats or owls. And they have this really intriguing way of hunting. Oops, I'm sorry, did I just, apparently when I move my mouse, it, apologies. I moved my mouse and it moved for me. So they create this scaffold, and then they use a special thing called a cribellum, which is basically 25,000 little nozzles that squirt out nanometer-sized silk lines that they attach to their anchor lines to that scaffolding. And is it no longer timing? Let me see. My apologies. Yep, it should still be.
Just click play. Yeah.
So they have a special comb called the calamistrum on one leg that they use to weave and comb those nanofibers. And they don't put any glue on their webs like other spiders do. And they create these little puffy sections that you can see, 90 nanometers, microns. These little puffs have electrostatic charges in them, and they hang upside down. They reach out quickly after dropping some white feces that allow them to see when the insect has crossed the white feces. They use them as targets, essentially. And as soon as even a single strand touches the insect, the electrostatic charges in those little puffs attach to the chitin, the polysaccharide outside of an insect, And the nanofibers actually change structure and fuse directly with the outside of the insect, so it can't get away. So they create this net, they detach the net and hold it with their claws, they flip upside down, they strike outward with their legs, and then they ensnare the insects and pull them in. And I kind of like the idea of this creepy costume, which shows a netted catch of an ogre spider. That's a wonderful way to celebrate the creepiness of Halloween. There you go. That's the end. Oops. Am I still? I'm not hearing anything.
I don't hear anything.
Does
either.
anybody have questions for Ben?
Did you guys hear?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Great
Because
job.
I'm not hearing you anymore for some reason.
Oh, can you hear
There we-
this?
Now I
Test.
can. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. No
But
worries.
you heard me.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Great job.
So who has questions? Oh, Renata.
Oh, right. Wait,
Yeah.
wait. I forgot to introduce this the first time. So thank you, Sonia, for offering to be our Q&A person and calling on folks at will.
Renata.
Thanks. So I've always wondered about how spiders do what they do. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so this pooping thing, that's specific to this kind of spider?
Yeah, because so they have these giant eyes, and the fascinating thing about their eyes is that because they don't have any iris, every night they spend about 2 hours rebuilding the membrane with the photosensitive dyes that or pigments, I mean, that perceive all that light. And as soon as the daylight hits, that membrane is destroyed, and they have to rebuild that membrane again the next day. So even with all that light perceiving ability, they still need a little guide so that when an insect is coming along, they drop this white poop. And as an insect crosses the white poop, it's like a target. And
That's
the spider
amazing.
knows to reach out and grab them. Although they're also known to do the same thing as do bolo spiders, of actually reaching out and grabbing insects while they're flying. But usually they're grabbing them as they crawl by on the ground.
That's so brilliant. And so for the spiders that aren't doing that, the ones
Yeah.
like you'll see a spider like flying across something, or like a spider web that goes across a huge distance.
Right. Well, so
How does that happen?
spiders are almost always trailing silk. Even spiders that are ground dwelling spiders like tarantulas and wolf spiders will usually be trailing silk behind them. They use that silk partly as a way to feel the motion of insect prey. And so when I go outside at night, just right outside my house, and I walk down my stairs, I often run into streams of spider webs that are let go by young spiders that are sailing, essentially. They let out a stream of silk and they go sailing on this stream of silk. But usually what you're talking about, they'll pin the end of one piece of silk, they'll walk down and crawl across to another place and then walk up. So now they've pulled one across. Once they anchor that, then they do sort of the similar thing to anchor to points, and then they start building a structure on it.
Okay, so they're actually walking it across. They're
Yeah,
not like
yeah, they don't
flying.
jump from one wall to the other. Otherwise, their lives would be much more terrifying than they are.
And then the sailing, sorry.
Yeah. So the young animals have the need to disperse away from their parents to find their own territory. Spiders, if you've ever seen them hatch out of an egg sac, there are hundreds of them.
Yes.
And they have to disperse, and they're tiny. So if they were going to crawl, they wouldn't make it very far very quickly. So they actually let out a long stream of silk, and it can be 10, 12, 15 feet long. And it's so light that it's picked up by the wind, and it just picks them up and carries them off, and they go to some new territory.
That's so cool. Thank you.
Other questions? Turner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious, how much energy does it take for spiders to spin a web? Like if they spin a web and then it gets destroyed or whatever, like, and they don't eat anything that day, is that like detrimental to them?
I've never seen anything on the actual calorie usage and what kind of a drain it is on them. But since I've never seen something that says that this is draining on them, I believe they're very efficient in terms of how they use energy in general. So I don't think it's a problem. It's not like Spider-Man where you see him run out of web. I mean, they seem to be able to produce it as much as they need. But one of the things that they do to help preserve it is they actually reuse their web. They'll eat their own web if it's not being utilized. They'll pull in extra web that they've used. One of the cool things about that ogre face spider I saw is that if they have, so while they are actually eating the thing they just caught, they'll be beginning the process of building their next net to catch the next one. And if they get to the end of the night and they have one that hasn't been used yet, they cut it off, they hang it on a leaf nearby, and they wait, they use it the next night, they pick it up again, and they start with the one that came from the day before. So it's pretty amazing.
Wow, that's
Angie, you
cool.
had a question?
Yeah, so how do they not get caught in their own web?
So, you know, different kinds of webs are used for different sorts of things. Some are mostly support structure and they're not particularly sticky. Some, if you've ever seen a golden garden spider that has that sort of back and forth kind of Z shape in the middle of it, those are sticky. In the case of the cribellate spiders, like the ogre face spider, they don't have that really sticky stuff. However, they can be somewhat sticky, and the spiders avoid getting stuck to their own webs because they have little tarsal claws that they actually hold onto the web with that. So their body isn't actually touching it except for where the claws are holding on. So they avoid getting stuck on it. But it probably happens. You know, every once a spider accidentally tips over onto his own sticky web, and you know, how embarrassing. I'm sure it happens.
Okay, thanks.
I noticed there were more questions.
There is one more down there.
There are quite a few, actually.
Oh,
I noticed Dana had a question, or was
Yeah.
it Dina? Let's do 2 more questions. Maybe you can put other ones in the chat and harass.
Well, I just wanted to say
sorry,
that-
Ben, later.
When we were growing up, Ben was always bringing bugs and snakes and creepy crawly things into the house, and they wouldn't always stay in their cages. But I wanted to ask about when I was in Costa Rica and I went on a night walk with a naturalist,
uh-huh.
and we saw big spider webs, and I actually saw, while the guide had the light trained on it, that a bug flew into it, and then the spider went down to it and like wrapped it up in a capsule, and
Right.
that whole process of weaving was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, go ahead. Was that?
No, I just wondered if you could talk about
Yeah.
that.
So the challenge that every predator has is not being injured by its prey. And if you think about it, a lot of animals, a lot of prey species are potentially quite dangerous. So spiders, you know, their body parts are not all that sturdy usually, particularly the ones that hang out on webs. So in order to avoid being damaged, they reach out and they throw loops of silk around the animal and then wrap it up completely. And then that also helps sort of contain it, because once they bite it and inject their digestive enzyme,
Right.
the inside becomes essentially soup.
Yeah, that's what he told us. And
Yeah,
then they can just
They just suck
put
it out.
they suck out the,
Right.
that liquefies it.
Their chelicera, which are their mouth parts.
That's
and
amazing.
Suck out the insides. Yeah.
We have
Thank you.
time for
Yeah. One more.
unless I'm being stopped to move on. Chris, you had a question?
I was just going to talk about the electric field.
Yeah. I
and
knew you would.
how, sufficiently small spiders, apparently their webs have an electric charge that is repelled by the Earth's electric field, and that can lift them up even if there's no wind at all.
Oh, interesting.
And they can
Okay.
put a link in the chat to an article about it.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move us on, but I
Thank
know
you.
that the hosts have questions, and since you're the host, you can do whatever you want. So if you have more questions, put them in the chat, or bug Ben in a little bit.
Okay. If anyone needs to have a little break, I figure we'll start Julian at 12:50, which I think was the original plan. So Eric, why don't you ask your question, and then people will also ask questions in the chat, and we'll just, anyone who wants to, we'll keep doing this chat until it's time. Eric, what's your question?
I'm wondering if any spiders have been known to tie knots or weave patterns of any complexity.
Well, I mean, I think every orb weaver, they're in fact kind of revered in many parts of the world and seen as mystical animals for their ability to weave those large webs. Some large orb weavers can weave webs, 10 or 12 feet across. It's pretty impressive. And their ability to measure exact distances, just like honeybees do. If you look at honeybee cells, their cells are all within, like a several 10,000ths of an inch of similarity in size. Orb weavers do the same thing, where they're able to measure the distances between different parts of the web and weave what I think are pretty remarkably detailed webs. Although that thing of the little puffy nanofibers, that takes the cake for me. I can't think of anything more amazing.
Very cool. I was also just wondering, as the last thing are there any spiders like in the movies, like in Indiana Jones, where you can get caught in the web if you walk into it?
No, I mean, so the largest spiders, largest heavy ones are tarantulas. They can get about a foot across. There are some others that get up to close to a foot that are lighter bodied, but tarantulas don't weave webs. So the real big ones, all those things you see at Halloween with the great big spiders that look sort of more like tarantulas on webs, it's like, nope, wouldn't happen. There'd be a web, there'd be a spider, but they wouldn't be together. So that would be pretty unusual, but it doesn't take away from the creepy factor if you're walking in the night and you walk right into a spider web out around your face. Because one thing is it feels kind of creepy, but the next question is, where's the damn spider, right? So massively creepy.
Yaf had a question in the chat, and then I have a related question to her question.
What silk means. So silk is a protein. Other animals do make silk. In fact, I learned of a cricket the other day that spits silk. So the silk has the advantage of being flexible but strong, something they say, 10 to 20 times as strong as steel, that kind of thing. And different webs are different strengths, but they're all pretty impressive. And the curled nature of the molecules of proteins helps make the whole thing stretchy, but also the bonds are pretty tight. I don't know the exact process of the chemical building of the silk in the silk glands, but I'd be happy to look that up.
Is that the same as silk from other animals?
Yeah, all the silk is pretty much the same. The reason that silk that we make our clothing with comes from silkworms is that silkworms create a cocoon, and you put that cocoon into boiling water, and someone who's adept at it can easily grab the end of it and unspool this incredibly long thread, a single long thread of silk, making the entire cocoon. So it's the only practical way to get. I'm not aware of any other silks being used commercially, but it's just because the way the silkworms weave their cocoon, it's incredibly easy to make it commercially usable. So.
Ooh, I know one. Black widow silk has been used in gun sights for the crosshairs.
Cool. Yeah, and black widows, their web is incredibly messy. They're not orb weavers. They just make a crummy web that will entangle things that happen to wander into it, but it's not a beautiful web like many of the others. But it is quite strong. I can imagine why they would use it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ben. I will ask my question about goat milk spider silk later.
Okay.